Hey, this is Russell Moore, and this is a brand new project called One Thing You Missed. And every Friday, I'll be coming to you with one item that I see in news or in culture or somewhere around us that I think we might not have noticed or paid enough attention to. And so sometimes those are going to be things that are kind of light, sometimes things that are really heavy. And for the first one, what I'd like for us to talk about is one thing I think that you might have missed this week is the conversation going on in the culture around porn. There's a podcast that the Atlantic magazine does called Crazy Genius that had a conversation about pornography and what's porn doing to our sex lives. So these were secular experts coming on. One of them, an expert in the psychological field, said people are losing the ability to have real intimacy because of the effects of pornography. She wasn't making a moral argument, but she was making a neurological and psychological argument. Someone else came in and said, I think porn is morally neutral. I think porn is fine. It's just that porn's not a good place for sex education. So you can hear the sort of clash of understandings around porn. In addition to that, though, there's a really interesting book that came out called Addicted to Lust, Pornography in the Lives of Conservative Protestants. And now, I found myself fascinated by some parts of this book and really disagreeing with other parts. There's a review that Mark Regnerus did in the new issue of Christianity Today that is really good. And one of the things that Mark does is to point out the fact there's not a lot of prescription here in this book. I would also have a big problem with what this author is doing in looking at porn patterns among evangelical men, is saying that porn is actually worse for Christian men than it is for non-Christian men, not in terms of its prevalence, but because there's a moral incongruence, he says. So you have Christian men who know that porn is wrong, but when they're doing it anyway, that puts them in this difficult situation. Now, he says that's because of what he calls sexual exceptionalism, where you have this view of sexual immorality as being somehow distinct and distinctly problematic in evangelical circles. I don't think that's the problem, because I think the reason that Christians have a kind of sexual exceptionalism is because the Bible does. 1 Corinthians 6 talks about sexual immorality as being, in some sense, distinct from other sins because it's a sin against one's own body. And so I think that the author here is wrong, but he's right that there's a lot of moral incongruency happening where people are acting in ways that they don't believe. So they say that the culture is wrong in pornifying, but as he puts it, they don't actually want to disengage from that culture. What that means is we have a lot of work to do in our churches in teaching what the Bible communicates about sexuality, about the immorality of pornography, and also equipping people, not by just driving them into hiddenness and shame, but in equipping people to cultivate real intimacy, real love and obedience and faith toward God through Jesus Christ, and freedom. What do you think? What do you think about the conversation going on around pornography? Let me know in the comments.